Welcome to On Texas Football Special Report. I'm Bobby Burton, joined by CJ Vogel and Gerry Hamilton of On Texas Football. Guys, earlier today reported that Johntay Cook, the wide receiver out of DeSoto, is no longer with the University of Texas football team. Highly rated recruit, came in as one of the stars of the 2023 recruiting class. Here you can see ranked number 38 overall in the country by 24/7 Sports. The composite had him even higher at 29, number 3 receiver in the country, number 6 overall player in the state of Texas. What went wrong in Austin for Johntay Cook and the Longhorns?
So for me, you look at DeAndre Moore in the same recruiting class. And if you, Bobby, you've talked about it before, if you don't come in with a elite trait, right? And that means that could mean size. That can mean speed, just a blur like an Isaiah Bond, right? A size combination of a Ryan Wingo. Maybe it's just a 50-50 ball winner type of guy, right? But if you don't come in with an elite trait, and that doesn't mean you're not a really good prospect. I mean, Johntay Cook was a really good prospect coming out of DeSoto. I'm not sure he was ever a 5-star prospect because his hands weren't that consistent for me. But if you don't come in with an elite trait, and other guys that are going to be recruited at programs like this then you have to go find your niche in your role and go bust down the door. And you got to find your way to success at a program like this. And you've seen DeAndre Moore do that. And they're similar testing guys, right? DeAndre Moore's a little thicker, but if you'd have put them through a combine in high school, they probably would have tested similar. But DeAndre Moore looked at what Jordan Whittington did and said, and Chris Jackson told, that is your bread and butter right there. First guy out to practice. All three of us are there. So DeAndre Moore comes in. Johntay Cook got on the field last year. DeAndre Moore didn't very much. He got on the field more than DeAndre Moore. But DeAndre Moore found a role in a niche, and he's taken it and run with it at Texas. And I don't think Johntay Cook was ever able to do that. Then when he got his opportunities on the field, he didn't maximize enough of those. And then, that becomes where your snap counts start going down. And then you had issues. Once you make your decision mentally to transfer, then you're never going to be fully in anymore. So that's when issues start popping up.
Hey, CJ, I got to ask you this. I mean, you look at it from our vantage point, and there's also the element of Isaiah Bond being added to the roster and certainly becoming a focal point. Then Matthew Golden takes up another spot. Silas Bolden comes in even late in the summertime. And look at this depth chart right now. And I want to ask you guys this because Johntay Cook, the backup currently to DeAndre Moore, but really he's a backup to a couple of different people on that list. What do y'all make of this? And I will say this, same recruiting class, not only DeAndre Moore, but Ryan Niblett.
Yeah.
That has gone through this situation where maybe he could have transferred, but he's decided to stay and buckle down. CJ, what do you make of the depth chart now that we know that Cook's not going to be in it going forward?
Yeah, well, over the last 4 or 5 weeks or so, it doesn't really change much,
Yeah, that's true.
We'll go over snap counts here in a minute, but I mean, Johntay was a part of that quote unquote circle of trust early in the year, and then for whatever reason, whether it be in practice, whether it be in games, whether it just be the attitude around the program, he fell out of favor there, right? Only 11 snaps in total in all of SEC play. And to the point that Gerry made earlier about DeAndre Moore finding a niche, finding a role. Listen, Ryan Niblett changed positions. He did what he had to do to get on the field and help this football team. Now, again, Johntay Cook had a leg up last year. You could probably kind of put that wide receiver 4 label on him on a team that had 3 NFL wide receivers. Why was he not able to secure a position, a larger volume share this year? I don't know, but I do know that it took him a while to get acclimated to the playbook a year ago. I know that it took him a little while to get up to speed when all these new wide receivers were coming in via the portal, and that's not what you want to hear for a guy who theoretically has the most experience in this program. So I look at 2 things, right? Do you adjust? Do you do everything you can to help this football team win games? Ryan Niblett did. Do you have a tremendous work ethic, first guy on the field like DeAndre Moore? right now I can't say he was up to par with what Moore brings to the table. And I think as a result, you saw that kind of linger over into when the spring came around and all these guys got on campus. That's when the snaps and kind of that favor fell out. But right now, again, I'll pull up the snap counts here. You see, starting at Mississippi State, it really fell off a cliff there. Of course, he had his one big opportunity for about a 65, 70-yard touchdown in that game, and it hit his hands and then hit the turf, which is very unfortunate again. But that goes back to the inconsistency with his hands, and that's, of course, where his snaps basically ended for as a Texas Longhorn.
Look at his run. One of the things I will say, look at his run blocking. This is according to, I believe, Pro Football Focus, right? The run blocking grades, very low for him on each of those. That could be part of it too, because we know DeAndre Moore has been a very willing blocker this season, as has Matt Golden and Isaiah Bond and Ryan Wingo as well. Even Silas Bolden has been a blocker. And I kind of wonder if Silas Bolden's arrival a couple of weeks ago against Oklahoma didn't portend Johntay Cook not getting the snaps that now are going to Silas Bolden as well. Jerry, you mentioned something that I wanted to hit on too, by the way, and that's that you said, look, you got to bust down the door sometimes. If you're not a Ryan Wingo where you run sub 4.5 and you're 6'2", 200 pounds, or you're not Isaiah Bond and you run 4.27, you got to find a way to make yourself indispensable to the team. Johntay was unable to do that for whatever reason. We could CJ just listed a bunch of them, but you got to bring something to the table that makes you indispensable. That's what Silas Bolden has done.
That's right.
Even to a lesser level just because of that Oklahoma game and that fumble recovery.
And he's also the punt returner. He's got a role. He's the punt returner. I mean, Matthew Golden, kickoff return guy and red zone witch for Texas. But here's the thing, going into – I want to make this clear because sometimes it sounds like we are bashing on a kid that leaves.
No,
we're discussing this. I want to make this very clear. Who got first-team reps in the spring? Johntay Cook. Who got first-team reps in August? Johntay Cook. He had chances. It's not like Matthew Golden wasn't running with the ones in any of our media sessions. I mean, he had opportunities here. It's what you make of the opportunities. And clearly, maybe Sark and the staff are wrong in 4 years. I'm going to say they were right based on what I've seen, that the best players were playing. I mean, and that's just competition at a major university. And here's the thing that was very telling. CJ and I talked about this on Coffee and Football this morning, Bobby. 0 snaps against Vanderbilt with Isaiah Bond out. That's the writings on the wall. Couldn't be more clear.
Yeah. I'll add this to you guys, just thinking about it and talk about difference. You can take 2 paths if you come into the University of Texas. Trey Wisner was the lesser regarded of the 2 recruits at DeSoto that Texas brought in. Johntay more highly regarded. Johntay comes out of the gate pretty strong at Texas. To CJ's point, number 4 receiver last year, most likely. What does Trey Wisner do? He earns it on special teams and then gets a little run at the end of last year and then comes on this year. A lot of it is you can take 2 paths and decide which way you're going to go. We'll see if that's what it was with Johntay Cook or just better players in front of him. I think Isaiah Bond has more talent than Johntay Cook. I think
Matthew Golden's a better football player. Matthew Golden didn't drop the pass all season. I mean,
it's not just effort is my point.
Right.
And willingness to give in. A lot of it is maybe he was a little overrated coming out of high school by not just by us, but by the industry as a whole, in my opinion. All right, I want to take another look, if y'all don't mind, at the wide receiver depth chart at this point. And this is what I want to get into here, if y'all don't mind. With Cook out now, there's another name that's not on there. Freddie DeBose is not on this list. Aaron Butler not on this list, okay? Now, Cook gone. Then you think Bond will be gone to the NFL. Jerry, you're pretty adamant that you think Matthew Golden's going to have that opportunity. Yeah. Silas Bolden has a year left. DeAndre Moore, a year left at least. And then Ryan Wingo, obviously, and Ryan Niblett, Parker Livingston. Texas currently has, 3 wide receivers coming in. Khalil Lockett, Jamie French, and Dalen McCutcheon, potentially a fourth if they find if somebody shakes loose really, really late. Maybe Michael Terry gets his first shot at wide receiver if he commits to the Longhorns soon. What do y'all think of the Texas wide receiver depth chart right now? Are they going to need and want to go to the portal again for at least one big-time guy this offseason? I see both y'all shaking your head. So, CJ, why don't you take that first?
If you're Texas and you're able to go out and add an Adonai Mitchell or an Isaiah Bond level guy, throw Matthew Golden into that mix as well, you should absolutely do that and be in the market to do so every year, regardless of who you have, in my opinion. Of course, why would you not? If you could pair up a Ryan Wingo, DeAndre Moore with a guy who has experience and production at a high Division I level, I think you'd be foolish not to. And that's even with who else might be returning with the Silas Bolden or who else might be emerging. We talk about Parker Livingstone or a possible Ryan Niblett, Freddie DeBose, what might not happen there. Who knows? But I think you would be foolish to not at least test the waters in the wide receiver market every single year if you're Texas. The other thing I wanted to mention is, listen, we haven't seen a lot of Austin Butler this year, right? He hasn't played, Aaron Butler in a game this year. He is expected to redshirt. That's perfectly fine. But one thing that was very encouraging and telling to me is who suited up in Isaiah Bond's absence whenever the team went to Nashville last week. It was Butler. So I think that's encouraging in the sense that the staff's trusting him and maybe rewarding him a little bit for his efforts in practice to say, hey, you're making the trip, because a lot of these freshmen who are redshirting from start to finish, they're at home. They're watching the game in the facility. They're watching the game on their couch. For him to be suiting up, making the road trip out there, that's something to keep an eye on.
That's a good nugget there, CJ. Jerry, what about you in the portal versus high school recruiting or the combination thereof?
So I think it'll be a speed guy, right? It's an experienced speed guy. And I'm not saying you can replicate Isaiah Bond. There aren't many guys that run 4.27 that will transfer him from Alabama to Texas, but somebody with legit wheels. Because if you look at this freshman class coming in with the guys you see here, and Aaron Butler and Freddie DeBose are not listed, and I do think Aaron Butler has got a skill set that can find his way onto the field long term at Texas. Khalil Lockett's an outside guy. Jamie French is a bigger wide receiver, 6'2", 185. He'll be built like A.D. Mitchell when he gets ready for the NFL draft in a few years. But he's an outside guy that you can also move around because he's football intelligent. Dalen McCutcheon's in the DeAndre Moore mold will probably kind of play his way into that role as a younger guy like DeAndre Moore. Sit and watch DeAndre Moore, learn what that position in the offense, take in everything that DeAndre Moore's done where he copied Jordan Whittington. So if you look at with the three high school receivers coming in, it's a speed guy because there's been questions whether Sark would make a push for a Kelshawn Johnson. I think he's going to make a push in the portal for that speed guy, that guy that has some electricity about him every time he sticks his foot in the ground. I think that's what you'll see in the portal. Last year, they needed 3. I don't think they need that many this year, though. Not with – and you got to see what Matthew Golden does, I think I think he's a mid-round guy, and it's going to be hard to turn down that draft stock. You played 3 years and been a really good college player. But DeAndre Moore and Ryan Wingo, if Silas Bolden returns, now that's what affects you in the portal. If he says, you know what, I'm just going to go take my shot in the NFL and I'll go be a star in the Canadian League if I don't make it in the NFL, then that takes me to 2. But if either Golden or Bolden come back, I think that number is actually 1.
Yeah, my point, and I agree with CJ's take. If you find productivity in the portal, why don't you take it?
Yeah.
That's just the bottom line. We've seen it work now 2 years consecutively for Texas with Mitchell last year and now with Bond and Golden this year. They can pick up the offense quickly enough, in my opinion, if they're a good enough player. And so we'll see, and we'll be following that obviously at On Texas Football as well. Any parting thoughts here as we go forward? I mean, is this a situation that Texas needs to be leery of going forward? Where they went wrong or didn't go wrong with Johntay Cook? Is it a scenario where these things are just natural attrition is going to happen? Any thoughts there?
I think they're naturally going to happen. It's competition. Rankings are one thing coming out of high school, but then You have to, and I'm not saying Johntay didn't, but I just think it's a natural process. When you have as many talented players as Texas is going to have from a high school ranks, then you're a blue blood in the portal. Competition is real and it's right there in your face. So it's much different with the portal nowadays than it was just recruiting in high school and taking the occasional transfer. So your ability to develop and have patience, the combination, and that's what I said going into this year, guys, is and I'm not sitting here saying I was right, but it's just something you monitor is, DeAndre Moore and Johntay Cook come in the same class. And I said what will happen with those guys this year is that when you bring in 3 guys from the portal and 2 of those guys end up being starters, then you're in a really good position as a staff because you see which of your young receivers are really bought into your process and your development. And then it makes it easier if somebody transfers out. I mean, that's just the reality of it. The reality of it is Johntay's a good player. Johntay got beat out. He didn't beat those guys out. He didn't get a raw deal. He was running with the ones in the spring. He had plenty of opportunities. He was running with the ones at the start of fall practice. He didn't make the most of his opportunities this year. And you saw very early on against Michigan that DeAndre Moore and Matthew Golden were going to make the most of their opportunities. DeAndre Moore had a touchdown called back in that game. Those guys were playmakers from day one. And DeAndre Moore, it really, I think, just did all the things that Chris Jackson was looking for. And that's where I come out on it.
If I can build on that, it's a couple things here. It's when you come in, how hard do you work off the bat? How eager are you to learn the playbook? How eager are you to get your feet wet and learn from the guys above you, right? That, again, to go back to DeAndre Moore, he basically lived in the shadow of Jordan Whittington. And when you get your opportunities and you pay off that hard work, I look at a few things. Go back and watch the team, the sideline, when Trey Wisner scored his first touchdown in a 50-point win last year against Texas Tech. Go back and look at the sideline when Ryan Niblett got his first touchdown this year. Those are guys that had to grind for their reps, for their spots on the field. They weren't ever given to the 2 of them. And I know that those were in mop-up duties, but look at the roles that they have now for this team. That's because they grinded, they worked, they stayed the course, they kept their head down. That has to be the case if you're a high-level recruit. We're seeing it, and that's kind of the big results that we're hearing from about Ryan Wingo as well. So, the opportunities were there. It's unfortunate, obviously, because Johntay was a guy that came in with a high personality. We knew that to be the case, and so it's unfortunate it didn't work. I'm wishing Johntay the best because it was a blast working him or, recruiting him, covering him as a recruit. I wish him the best, but the opportunities were there.
I want to tie something in the recruiting real quick too, Bobby, is because one of the questions that was asked on Coffee and Football, and it was at the end of our show, we didn't have the chance to get to it. Does it hurt Texas and DFW? I say not at all. And the reason I say that is DJ Campbell's starting, Cam Williams is starting, Anthony Hill's an All-American, Colin Simmons has a bright future, Manny Muhammad is going to be an NFL draft pick. We could go on. But Trey Wisner, I mean, look, does one guy leaving, and I know why people are thinking that because he was the biggest voice on social media from a recruiting standpoint coming out in his class, but DFW guys are thriving in Texas, at Texas. There's going to be All-Americans in multiple draft picks and guys that are starting 35, 40, 45 games before they leave Texas. And the reality of competition is they all can't play. And the only advice I would give Johntay is just to chill on the social media talk now, man. The next one's going to be wait for my comeback. Just stay off of it. Just go do it. Try going doing it the second. Learn from the first thing. Do it the second time. Don't talk about it beforehand because then it just looks like you're not learning.
All right. That's going to do it. Special report. Words of wisdom there from Gerry Hamilton. Appreciate your help there, Gerry. Explain everything. You too as well, CJ. For our producer, Matt Hutchison, I'm Bobby Burton. Special report of On Texas Football. Johntay Cook no longer on the University of Texas football team. Guys, y'all take care. Hook 'em.